friends, and welcome to Friday, February 1st. We have officially exited January, and now we're entering the month of love. And if you're not partnered up right now, the month of love may not feel so good for you, but I have great news. Regardless of whether you're partnered up or not, this month we're going to be focusing on this page here at Waitlist all about love, but not love that you share with others, the type of love that you share with yourself. You may have heard of this as self-love. We know that February is Heart Health Month, so I may be introducing some topics around, some posts around taking care of your heart, recognizing signs of heart attack and things like that, because heart disease is a #1 killer of women, and our symptoms of heart attack are slightly different than it is for men, so creating some awareness around that. But during these live streams every Friday, we'll be talking about self-love. So this week we're going to be talking about appreciation, because we cannot start loving anything, whether it's ourselves or someone outside of ourselves, until we've learned to appreciate it. So today's video, for the next 20 minutes or so, we'll be focusing on how to appreciate more. Before we dive into that, I'd like to say that today is officially the last day you can join me in my 30 days program. If you're like, what on earth is this 30 days thing? Basically, it's a program I started back in December, and the concept of the program is consistency. Because there are a lot of different programs out there that are like, start this, start that, start this, and at the end of 30 days, it just kind of falls off a cliff and you never have to worry about it again. So consequently, most 30-day programs focus on all of the things. If you're talking diets, you're talking about removing pretty much anything that you like to taste or like to eat. If you're talking about exercise, you're usually laser focusing on a particular type of exercise or focusing on a particular part of your body. 30 days is not about that. Instead of saying do all the things for 30 days, full tilt, 100% effort, we're going to say no, we're going to do 100% effort, but only towards one habit. And this is a challenge for a lot of people, because we feel like that we have to do everything at once. And then we give up and feel overwhelmed and feel like we can't go on because we're focusing on all the things, which means we're not focusing on anything. So 30 days is my answer to that. And over the course of 30 days, I will support you with weekly accountability. Now, this support is unique in that I'm doing it via text and email. So you will not have phone calls with me. If you want to work with me as a private coaching client, we do phone calls, but that is not something that's part of 30 days. 30 days is more of a low-touch kind of program. So I will be checking in with you on a weekly basis, but it's going to be via text and email. And then in the middle of the month, every month we'll be having a group call, because this is, while we're focusing on your individual goals, there will be a group element to it as well. And for February, our group call will focus on self-love. So while I'm giving you free content within these live streams for the next 3 Fridays this month, in my paid program, 30 days, we're going to really dive deep into the things that matter most to you in terms of what you most struggle with. We'll check in with your progress and we'll support you along the way. And 30 days has a different month every month. And as you might notice, it fits along with the live streams that we do in this group. So March is National Nutrition Month. So March, we're going to be doing nutrition, both within the live streams in on this page here. So those are the free live streams, and also within 30 days, which is a paid program where I support you weekly with accountability. So March will be nutrition, and April will be fitness, because we're starting to wake up and want to get outside and do some more fitness. It's easier to do that when we're not in hibernation mode. So that's what's coming up for the next 3 months. If you're interested in 30 days, we officially kick off today, which means that Monday is when we're going to start with our weekly accountability checks. Today is the last day to get into that for the month of February. And I'm offering a special price break for you if you decide to not just do the 30 days for February. I know there's 28 days in February, but where you can also do March and April for $250. So the next 3 months, weekly support from me to reach one consistent daily habit. And yes, you absolutely can master that within 90 days. I guarantee it. Then check out the link. I'm going to pop a link down below here to get started with 30 days. By the way, you'll notice the link is a blog post because I don't have a sales page for this program. I'm just approaching people individually or previous clients to see if they want to join this program. So it's a very small, intimate group. I'm excited to kick it off. Today's the last day. So I'll pop the link below. And if you don't see it or you have questions about the program, please let me know, because 30 days is super fun for me, super fun for my clients. And while I will continue it through May, I take a break for the summer. So I'm not accepting any new people after the next few months. So if you're on the fence with this, comment below, connect with me privately, and we'll chat about what your situation looks like and if this is a good fit for you. In the meanwhile, I did mention that February is the month of love. It's actually also my husband's birthday, and pretty much everyone I know seems to have a birthday this month. So it's kind of fun because I know a lot of people who are having birthdays. A lot of my previous clients are having birthdays this month. So happy birthday to you. If this is your birthday month, then let me know so I can say a personal happy birthday to you in the comments. So let's talk a little bit about self-love. First of all, what is it? What is self-love? To me, and there are many different definitions, but here's what I'm going to be going with during the course of this month. To me, self-love is acknowledging, appreciating, and loving who you are for who you are right now. Not for your potential, not for your education or skills and talents, not for your current situation in life, just for who you are and for who God made you. So, and again, I'm not particularly Christian, but I may pop that in there from time to time. Think of it as your parents love you, right? They don't necessarily like you all the time, but they love you for who you are. And so, you know, self-love, you might have certain things about yourself that you don't appreciate, and that's okay. But as a whole, if at the end of the day, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love you, then that is my definition of self-love. Now, love doesn't happen from nowhere, like it just doesn't appear. And most of us do not fall in love with ourselves at first sight. Isn't that funny? So when you think about it, babies don't recognize their own reflection in the mirror for quite a while. I think it's probably 1 or 2 years old before they recognize that it's themselves in the mirror. When we first come face to face with ourselves, it can be somewhat startling. When babies finally start to realize that that's their own image, then they cheese it up, right? So think about a young child who's looking in a mirror. Maybe they tried on a cute little outfit. Maybe they're just like, oh, that's me. And they start making funny faces in the mirror. They play it up, right? They love it. They're loving every minute of it. They're like smiling at themselves. They're like so happy to see themselves. That's the kind of feeling I want you to come away with at the end of this month for self-love. If you're not there right now, it's okay. Not all of us can be in the same place at the same time, but my goal for the course of this month is to get you to that place. Why is self-love important? You may have heard the talk about if you don't love yourself for who you are, then nobody else is going to love you. Well, that's kind of BS. You can still be loved by other people without loving yourself. You might make it really hard on that person who loves you to be able to share that love with you, because you might be very derogatory towards yourself. And that can be difficult for another person who loves you, for you, to hear or to acknowledge, if nothing else. So I believe firmly that you can be fully loved without loving yourself. However, you'll miss out on so much more enjoyment in life if you don't like who you are and don't love yourself for who you are. And I hear a lot of talk around self-love, especially, you know, people who are very much into the body positive community, where it's like they don't talk about weight at all because they feel like that's a bad word. Weight loss is a bad word. They will often talk about how they feel, enjoying the moments, enjoying what their bodies can do. So I feel like that is a good step in the right direction. So today we're talking about appreciation. If you don't appreciate anything about yourself, we're going to help you get there. So first of all, before we get started, and if you're watching the replay, make sure to comment below because I will certainly check in with you and see how you're doing. But I want you to share one thing that you don't like about yourself right now. If you want to get started with something a little easier, I would like you to share one thing that you do appreciate about yourself. Because let's get started with the easier part, right? We can usually think of at least one thing we appreciate about ourselves, whether it's our caring nature. We care for others, we check in, we love our family, we support our family. Maybe that's one thing you love about yourself or appreciate about yourself. Because you need to take this in steps, right? You don't just start loving yourself if you've always been hating yourself. You have to start appreciating things about yourself that you take for granted. For example, I appreciate that it's warm today. And I know that's not something about myself, but being in Minnesota here, we've had 3 days of negative 50-degree temperatures or something crazy. School was canceled. A lot of staying at home and eating a bunch of bad food for us because, we want to keep warm. I appreciate that it's warm today. And warm is a very relative thing because it's like 4 degrees outside right now. So if you're watching this and you're like in the South, you're probably like, that's not warm. But when you're comparing it to negative 50-degree temperatures, it feels very warm to me today. I only need a couple layers, that feels something I can appreciate very much. So share one thing, if you're watching this, about yourself that you appreciate. And then we're going to focus on something we don't appreciate about ourselves so much. And we're going to turn that thinking and flip that thinking to the opposite side. So one thing I appreciate about myself is I am extremely persistent. I mean, I don't know the definition of give up. And let's see how this plays out for myself. So I don't like to give up ever. And I don't like to be told what to do ever. So once I have it in my mind what I want to accomplish in life, then I go for it until it's done. I like to finish just about everything I start. Not everything, because I'm human. I have my moments, but pretty much anything I've set out to do that matters to me on a personal level, I will finish it. So I'm very persistent, and that's one thing I definitely appreciate about myself. Let's look at how this shows up for me, because you might be like, well, I appreciate this, but I'm not quite sure how it shows up. So let's brainstorm a little bit about how that might show up. And if you share what you appreciate about yourself, feel free to share some of the ways it shows up if you feel so comfortable. If you don't, that's fine. But this will help us understand something we don't appreciate about ourselves, because that shows up as well. So I said that I'm persistent, and that's something I appreciate about myself. Let's talk about most recent events and ways that this shows up for me. So back in July, I was supposed to be running my first half marathon. And when I say supposed to be, I mean I signed up, I was registered, I had a group of friends I was training with. And then 1 week before the actual date of the race, I woke up with significant back pain. I have a history of back pain. I've had back surgery. I have some nerve damage in my left leg as a consequence of a slip disc in my back. So this is not new to me, and there was always a slight chance that this would happen, but I did not expect it to happen the week before my half marathon. What happened then? So I knew I couldn't run the half marathon, and my husband was very concerned that I was going to do it anyway. My persistence is showing through. And I said, well, I have to run, but I'll just do a 5K instead. And I talked with my running friends, and they said, you can still run, you don't have to worry, whatever. I was working with a personal trainer at the time. I had seen, not a personal trainer, a physical therapist. So I saw a physical therapist. I ruled out any physical barriers to me running at all. Because initially I was like, well, what if that means I can't run at all? And my doctor said, no, you can run. It's okay. Be safe, whatever. So I said, okay, I'll run a 5K instead of a half marathon. It was a big downer for me. And after that, I slowly rehabilitated myself back up to running distance. And I ran, and I'm like, well, what do I do now? So I ran a 10K a month and a half later. And that went okay in the sense that I wasn't feeling any pain. I was still training. I didn't aggravate my back anymore. I still don't really know what happened to my back the week before the half marathon. And I said, I still want to run a half marathon. I'm turning 40 last year, and I still need to do this. This was a goal I set for myself, and I'm going to do this. So I found another half marathon in October, and I'm like, I love fall running. I'll do this in October. Signed up, showed up, very cold day. I almost gave up at mile 11 or 12, but I said, nope, I'm seeing this through. My family was waiting for me at the finish line, and I finished. So it didn't look the way I wanted it to look. I copped out of my first chance at a half marathon, but I said, there's other chances, and I'm going to take that chance. You know, I was safe. I acknowledged what my body was telling me. My body was telling me, you're not ready for this. So I ramped it up at a level that worked for me and for my body, and I still achieved my goal by running that half marathon by the time I turned 40. That is how persistence shows up for me. There are many other examples I could give you, but we don't need to go into those because this is not about me. So when you think about something you appreciate about yourself, think also about ways that that shows up for you. Like one example or one story or one whatever that happened in your life that shows the success of that, shows why that is something you can definitely appreciate about yourself. On the flip side, share one thing or think of one thing. You're welcome to write this down in a journal. I'm a big fan of journals, but share or think of one thing that you do not appreciate about yourself. Even the most positive person in the world has at least a few things they do not appreciate about themselves, and that's okay. This is not about loving 100% of who you are all the time. It's about loving the fact that you are just for who you are, not once you reach certain success levels or goals or anything like that. So one thing you do not appreciate about yourself, and I'm going to kick off the discussion with something I do not appreciate about myself. I have to think about this because I'm a person who's very confident and I like who I am. One thing I do not appreciate about myself is if someone is very spontaneous and suggests something that is not in my game plan, if you will. Like I have a sketch or a strategy of pretty much my entire day, what I want to happen in my head. I don't necessarily write it down because I'm not a to-do list person, but I have an idea of how I want the day, the week, the month to operate. And I know where things fit into that process, into that strategy, into that sketch. So if I'm with a very spontaneous person, I have spontaneous people in my family. My husband is very impulsive sometimes. My children can be impulsive. If they suggest something that is fun, say, oh, let's do this, and it doesn't fit into my preconceived plan, I might say no. In fact, I'm more likely to say no right away. That's just how I operate. I might say no because it doesn't fit in my plan, or I don't want to make it fit into my plan. So let's be completely honest with that. I don't appreciate that about myself because I feel at one point in my life, I could have or was more spontaneous, more fun-loving, more go with the flow. And while I can certainly accept certain pieces of my life and people in my life who are that way, sometimes they irk me, right? Sometimes that feeling very much irks me and throws me off my game. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just something that I don't appreciate as much about myself. I feel that people who are spontaneous have a lot of fun. There's something to be said for being impulsive and just going with your gut or the flow. With just taking up opportunities as they come. And I'm getting better at this, but it's not something I currently appreciate about myself. Obviously, I'm a big fan of goal setting and having a plan to get that goal. So I do appreciate that piece of it. I also understand that I might benefit from being more spontaneous and fun-loving and letting things go letting things deviate from my plan or my strategy or my sketch. So that's one thing I don't necessarily appreciate about myself. That's a difficult one to dig into because on the one hand, I do appreciate it, and on the other hand, I don't appreciate it. And I'm fortunate because I have outside forces that encourage me to step away from that. You may not have outside forces that encourage you to step away from something you don't appreciate about yourself. So for example, if you're someone who has a hard time sticking to a plan, and you have some health goals, then it might be very difficult for you to step away from that and to learn to appreciate that if you don't have an environment that supports you to see the other side of it. So I have a who is spontaneous and will sometimes bring up things that are outside the plan. And I have a decision at that point. Do I go with it? Do I not go with it? But he is constantly encouraging me to step outside my comfort zone. You may not have that external influence, which is why coaching may be a good factor for you, or working with someone in a program where they do encourage you to step outside of your comfort zone so you can learn to appreciate. While you may not operate best with a plan, you can certainly operate best with the right type of support. So that's something that can certainly change. That's something that can be nurtured, something that can be cultivated within yourself, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's easiest for you when you have an outside or external influence that's acting upon you to learn how to appreciate that side of you. If you don't currently have that, it will be a struggle, because how often do we push ourselves outside of our comfort zone? Very rarely, especially when it's something we're not appreciating. It's something we don't really acknowledge. You need to acknowledge something before you can appreciate it. There's steps to this, right? You have to acknowledge the way things are today before you can learn to appreciate them. And it could take years to go from acknowledgement to appreciation. It's worth the effort, but it could take a long time. And if you don't have an outside influence that's encouraging you to either acknowledge it and then appreciate it, then it may not be something you ever need to do, but it will be something that will always be there for you. And then after you've acknowledged and appreciated, that's when you can go to what we're going to be talking about in next week's video, which is affirmations. Loving that about yourself. Now, affirmations are ways to it's a technique to cement that acknowledgement and appreciation through a special technique. So we'll talk more about that next week. But that's kind of like the next level of approaching that self-love. Let's make it a little bit easier. We'll give an example of something that's physical. Because, I'm a health coach, so I do work in the physical. I have people who have certain goals they want to achieve and certain ways they want to look. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about how can you appreciate that? If you don't like the way your teeth are shaped, for example, yeah, you can go fix your teeth, but it's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you time, and there might be some pain involved. So, you can always change something physically about your appearance. Maybe you have gray hair and you're like, I need to dye my hair. You can certainly go and buy a box of hair color. Not all physical changes are easy, though. Suppose you suffer from chronic pain. That's not something that you can just change. And I'm guessing if you do have chronic pain or a chronic condition of some sort, you have been troubleshooting that for many, many years. It's not something you can just appreciate or love, especially if it's something you've been fighting with for many years. The same is true of your physical appearance. Certain things about your physical appearance, like the outside, the face of it, can change. You can dye your hair. You can cosmetically update pretty much anything. The wrinkles on your face, the teeth, whatever. And now there's all sorts of interventions in terms of your physical body as well. On the one hand, you have procedures such as cool sculpting and lipo and all those kinds of things. On the other hand, you have the hard work portion of it where you're in the gym pumping iron every day. There are different ways you can transform your physical appearance. However, even with these interventions, if you don't appreciate certain parts of your physical appearance and what they allow you to do, it doesn't matter if you put a coat of paint on top of it, you're still not going to appreciate it. Do you see where I'm going with this? You can put a coat of paint, or you can update something that you don't like about yourself, but you're going to have to regularly maintain that. And you're still not going to learn to appreciate what's underneath. And we're talking about what's underneath right now. So yeah, I know it's easy to update your physical appearance, but you still have to learn how to appreciate that appearance, because otherwise you're always going to be fighting with yourself. So let's share one thing that we physically don't appreciate about ourselves and find ways to flip that thinking. Really easy ways to flip that thinking. So I don't appreciate my stomach. Oh, I've never appreciated my stomach. And here's why. So when I was morbidly obese, my stomach has a very particular shape. I'm not going to show you because that's not what this is about. I don't appreciate my stomach because it kind of looks like it has a weird line in the middle of it that makes it look like a crease. And then I've got like pockets on each side. So it kind of looks like a behind. It's not smoothly homogeneous and all that. It's got a bit of a pouch and it looks like a behind. So I've never liked showing my stomach to anyone. And by the way, I've not had a C-section, so it's not due to surgery or anything like that. I do have surgery scars on my stomach from a gallbladder surgery I had when I was 17, but those are very small scars. So I'm not bothered by my scars on my stomach. I'm bothered by the shape of my stomach and the proportions of my stomach. So I don't appreciate that. And I have been everywhere from morbidly obese, 280 pounds to 160 pounds. And no matter what size I am or how hard I work on my physical appearance, my stomach still remains the same. It still looks basically the same. Some people have said, well, you can change the shape of it, the proportion of it. There are things you can do. Yeah, there are things I can do. But that has been something that has eluded me my entire life. And I don't think, I could put in a significant amount of work and change the shape of my stomach. Anyone can. But overall, it is what it is. Just like you can't change your body shape, it is what it is. You can get more fit, you can get more slim, you can get more trim. You can't change your shape. That's just how it is. So I've never enjoyed the shape of my stomach. I don't appreciate that about myself. Here's what I do appreciate about my stomach, because we're trying to flip the thinking, right? We're trying to appreciate it before we can start loving it. It's a process. You're not going to get there right away. I'm not going to love my stomach tomorrow. But what I appreciate about my stomach, and this may be a challenge for you to share, but I encourage you to journal through this if it's tough for you, or share your comments because we can help walk you through this. We means anyone who's commenting on this page. So what I appreciate about my stomach that's kind of misshapen and has always been out of proportion in my head to the rest of my body. I appreciate that it safely housed 2 daughters, healthy girls who were born naturally, vaginally, very nice pregnancies. I was never ill. I never struggled. And my stomach looked normal when I was going through pregnancy. Yeah, I had the bump, but it wasn't like crazy. My belly button didn't pop out. These other things didn't happen. And so it safely housed my 2 children, and they were born healthy, which is the biggest blessing I can possibly think of. I appreciate that my stomach was a safe haven for my children throughout the whole time they incubated in there. I'm very appreciative of that. Another thing I can appreciate about my stomach, I don't understand it, but I can appreciate it. My husband loves my stomach. He loves to play with it, which kind of makes me feel weird. It makes me feel very self-conscious, but he'll like rub it and things like that, almost for luck, but he likes bellies because he came from a culture in India where women expose their bellies. And apparently he used to play with his mom's belly because, she still wears a sari every day and her belly's exposed. I think having a little extra flab on your belly is not such a big deal in India, or maybe on certain ages or whatever. And they have techniques to cover their belly. I was very intense about covering my belly when I got married. I was wearing a sari, and I told them right away, the people who put me up in this sari, because I didn't know how to do it, I said, please cover my belly. Not just because I was pregnant, but also because I've always had this thing about my belly. But my husband enjoys it, and he likes it, and he thinks it's cute. Another thing I can appreciate about my belly is my daughters love to rest on my belly because it's soft. It's always going to be soft. That's just something that I have to share with my family. It's a way that they can feel close and comfortable with me, and that makes me feel happy, even though I feel still self-conscious about my belly. It's still a safe haven for my family and still something that they like about me. And so that's something that I can appreciate about my belly. One last thing I can appreciate about my belly, because I'm going to a belly dancing class tomorrow. I am not shy about dancing. I love dancing, but it's kind of funny because I've always believed that people who have a belly of some sort, like a little bit of pooch, I have more than a little bit of pooch, but people who have a little bit of pooch look better when they belly dance. I seriously believe that. Like if you're looking at someone who has like their ribs sticking out while they're belly dancing, to me, that's not as interesting. It's not as sexy. It's not as appealing visually. But if someone has just a little bit of pudge and they're belly dancing, they can do way more cool things with their belly, in my opinion. That's my personal opinion. I'm not hating on anyone who is really thin and is a beautiful belly dancer. There's plenty of them out there. I just feel that when you're a larger woman and you belly dance, I feel like that's a more visually appealing thing. So I love belly dancing, and I think because my stomach is bigger, I can do some of those stomach rolls. I can do some of those other things, and it looks more interesting and fun. That's just my personal opinion. So those are 3 things that I appreciate about my belly. Now that you know that is one thing I've always struggled with my belly. Your task today, if you're watching this, or over the weekend, or over the next week as you're thinking and marinating on this, is to point out one thing you appreciate about yourself today. One thing physically you do not appreciate about yourself. And then find at least one thing, one way you can flip that lack of appreciation into appreciation. Then join me next week at 9:30. Well, actually, no, next week join me at 10 a.m. I have a busy week next week on Friday. 10 a.m. on this page where we're going to be talking about affirmations, because those are techniques that might be helpful for you as you're thinking through this appreciation. We'll be talking about affirmations, what they mean, how to use them, how to make them more effective for you, because they're not always effective for people, and I'll explain why that doesn't necessarily work for you. In the meanwhile, if you are curious about joining 30 Days, I would love to have you. I'm happy to share details with you, but I need to know that you're interested. So comment below, 30 Days. Private message me. Let's get you in. We're officially starting. Today is the last day. $99 for the entire month of support for the next 3 months, which will take you through April, February, March, April. Then it's only $250. So I'm happy to share details with you. I'll pop the blog with the payment link below here, because that's information that you probably want to know. In the meanwhile, I'm so excited that our polar vortex is over here in Minnesota. Super excited about that. I have a beautiful day ahead of me with joining my co-working space. Today is my first day at my new co-working space, where I'll be bringing in clients for special VIP days and strategic sessions. So I'm super excited to run that part of my business and get started with that. But I hope you have a beautiful weekend. Let me know below the video here what your plans are for the weekend, because I'd love to cheer you on for that. In the meanwhile, don't forget to join me next week, Friday, February 8th, my husband's birthday, at 10 a.m. on this page, where we're going to be talking about affirmations. Have a beautiful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.